Welcome back to the Night Shift, your safe space for talking about UFOs, UAPs, NHI, disclosure, and everything else your friends, family, and coworkers are so sick and tired of hearing you go on and on about. It's the holiday season. You're about to have all of these people in the same room for God knows how long. Don't make the mistake of talking about politics. Don't do it. Keep it light. Talk about UFOs. And if you're met with a 1,000-yard stare or a blank expression, just take a breath, stand up, turn around, and walk away. Because you don't need those people. You don't need anybody. You just need us. And you need to believe in yourself and in them because they're real and they're here. And I am joined, I have to figure out why my light is all weird, by my producer and co-host and the musician behind the amazing music that you hear at the beginning of every show, Mr. Xander Jones. How are you, Xander?
I'm doing good. I'm not in control of his light, so it's nothing to do with me. Everything else, however.
The light's on me.
So you know how I said last week that, you know, it's okay to have some days off. If it all gets too much, just go away. We're all going to be here Monday. You don't have to think about it. Just have some time off. Mm-hmm. So the last week has just been so busy that I am now the complete opposite. I am a blank slate. I want the news. I don't know any news really. So Clint, you got to hit me with it tonight. You're going to fill me in.
Oh man, then we're in trouble because I've been on one story for the whole week and it's consumed all of my time. So I've been so focused on that I probably missed some other things, but I think this one is really a hot topic. I don't know why more people aren't talking about it.
So I know what you're talking about, and yes, I agree. It is. This needs, like, I'm sure somebody somewhere is doing some insanely in-depth research similar to you, I'm sure. And then they're all just going to explode with all of this information at once, and it's going to be the hot thing again.
I think it's when I've talked to people just kind of texting back and forth, and I'm like, hey, have you seen this? Everyone's saying the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, I saw that. That's a bigger deal. Like, why is no one talking about that? And that's been the whole conversation that I've had with like 10 different people this week. Why is no one talking about this? So we'll get into what it is in a minute, but if you read the show notes, you already know. Before we do that, a quick shout out to our audience and our members, our mod squad, Chris and Brett. Of course, we can't do this without you. Thanks, guys. Say hi to Chris and Brett. Be nice. We have a new member, War Wagon 83. Hey, War Wagon 83. All right. Welcome aboard. Great to have you here. Paris Diamonds, Terrence, Pat, who else? Zoltan. Got a full house tonight. Jesse.
I think we may have just hit our 400th member in the Discord as well.
Get out.
Yeah.
Wow.
It lags a little bit behind, so I think it'll update in maybe a few minutes. But Linda, if you're listening, you are the official 400th member of the Discord server. So
wow, Linda, get Linda's information if we can, and see it. We'll see if we can get Linda a mug.
If we're wrong, we have to stand by it anyway. We've already awarded it to Linda. She's, no matter what, she's the 400th, even if she's the 399th.
That's awesome. You just get in touch with the mod squad, Linda, and we'll get you squared away. I promise. So I guess the big news last week was the Senate UAP hearing, which I have only seen the aftermath of. I didn't watch it. Did anyone catch it? I heard it was just awful. That's basically all I've got.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch it. I wasn't going to waste my time watching that. It was. If the UAP hearing hadn't revealed anything, then the Senate hearing absolutely wasn't going to reveal anything. It revealed, if anything, it just told us, okay, that's the decision they've made. They're not going to do disclosure in that way. We know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I've been getting for like 25 years.
Yeah.
I think
you're not wrong.
I think that's kind of like where I want to take the show today, because I understand everyone's frustration. Oh, Rodrigo Fish. Wow. Super chat. Hi. Let's see here. Hi, guys. I have a question for you. Gillibrand, or Gillibrand, depending on who you ask, is the Susan Gao of Congress. She was almost threatening Kozlowski. I think Kozlowski was put in AARO by Mellon in some way. Well, what do we think, team?
I haven't heard anything about him being placed there by, I'm assuming Mellon is Chris Mellon. There are a few Mellons. I thought he was more recommended by Kirkpatrick, but I could be wrong there. Could definitely be wrong there. But yes, I heard that the questions were less than useful from Gillibrand.
I think that it goes without saying that tremendous pressure is put on members of Congress in both the House and the Senate to toe the line and do things a certain way. And that's always been the case. The military-industrial complex lobby groups that lean on Congress all the time, this is just one more thing. And of course, the defense and intelligence community puts pressure on them. And who knows? I mean, the whole system is very opaque and weird to decipher. I think the only thing that we can really count on is that if you pay attention to the stock trades of these individuals, more often than not, that's going to tell you where their real loyalties lie. So in terms of the actual hearing not being very productive, that doesn't surprise me very much at all. I do think the House hearing was productive, but I know the internet is still in flames over that whole thing. And whether people think it was a colossal failure or a success or something in between, I think if we focus on that, we miss something that is much more interesting. And I don't know why it took me a week before I even saw it. It came across my radar. But this statement that Matthew Ford put out just before the House hearing, did anybody watching catch that? I don't know if anybody in the audience caught that, but it came out and it blipped on the internet for like a day. And then it didn't really get picked up. At least I didn't see it get picked up very many places. And when I watched the statement, he did a video statement and then he posted the written statement, you're kind of like, oh, wow, this should be a huge story. And I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. And then as I got to looking into it and started texting other people in the space and trying to figure out, if anybody else was looking at this, they all kind of said the same thing. They were like, yeah, this is huge. You didn't see this. Have you looked at this at all, Xander? I don't think you've looked at this yet.
I have. So that was right at the end of last week, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I have seen the video, yes. I only watched it once, and it is worth a second watch. But yeah, absolutely. The only thing I could make that would maybe justify the quiet on it is if you have a quick Google of basically anything. My phone's just lit up because I said Google. If you Google like any of the details in the document, particularly names, then you're going to get a lot of just random results, and it's a bit like, okay, I'll wait for somebody else to do that research, because I think it's going to require quite a deep rabbit hole. Like you're going to have to get through some stuff to get to a meaning of everything. And that was my interpretation of it anyway. But still, like, as a statement that he's willing, I think he said he was willing to testify with this statement as well. I can't remember, but
he submitted it directly to Nancy and the subcommittee members.
So he's serious.
He's super serious. And the allegations that he makes in this statement are enormous. Like the consequences of for the people involved, the consequences are almost unfathomable. It's a huge deal. And he said, we'll watch the whole statement. Why don't we do this? Why don't we play through the entire statement first, and then we can talk about it. And then we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the main subject of interest in this video, who you're going to hear about in just a second.
Just let me know if you want me to pause it at any points, because you might want to pause at certain points. I don't know. But
okay.
Here we go.
November of last year, journalists Christopher Sharp, Josh Boswell, and I published a story in the Daily Mail exposing for the first time the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology's Office of Global Access and its classified UAP crash recovery program. Last weekend, Christopher Sharp published a follow-up article in the Liberation Times, providing further detail on how the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology operates its UAP crash recovery and reverse engineering programs through the Office of Global Access and the CIA's Counter-Proliferation Mission Center, or WCPMC. The head of the Directorate of Science and Technology serves as the primary gatekeeper of the entire UAP Deep Legacy program, overseeing operations such as the detection of UAPs through classified platforms, recovery operations, disbursement of recovered craft to government agencies and private defense contractors, and protection of derived off-world technologies. Glenn Gaffney, the former head of the Directorate of Science and Technology, is one of those gatekeepers. Last year, I revealed that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the former director of AARO, had assembled a secret technical advisory group to counsel AARO. Following my story, Dr. Kirkpatrick confirmed the existence of this committee to members of Congress, but refused to disclose the members' identities. As of 2 weeks ago, this classified advisory board continues to advise AARO. Multiple sources have confirmed that Glenn Gaffney, the former head of the Directorate of Science and Technology and gatekeeper of the UAP Deep Legacy program, was handpicked by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick to be on this advisory board. I must emphasize this. The most consequential person involved with the cover-up of non-human technology is advising the office which Congress has given a mandate to find these technologies. This is an abomination. This is unconstitutional. This is criminal. Also concerning is the fact that Glenn Gaffney is not the only AARO advisory board member who is involved with the Legacy Crash Retrieval and Reverse Engineering program. There are others whose names have not yet been divulged to me. These revelations are significant because one of AARO's primary missions is to provide a means for government whistleblowers to make protected disclosures on classified UAP special access programs, or SAPs, and controlled access programs, or CAPs, to AARO and its staff. The fact that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick chose as one of his primary advisors the very gatekeeper overseeing CIA-controlled UAP access programs raises serious questions about Dr. Kirkpatrick's true motives as the director of AARO. This reporting indicates that AARO may function as a fly-paper operation, intercepting whistleblowers' testimonies and feeding their identities back to the CIA. You have heard that there are whistleblowers who don't trust AARO. My sources have informed me that this is one of the reasons why. If the CIA intercepts their testimony before it reaches Congress, whistleblowers are in grave danger. Therefore, I employ you to wield your subpoena powers against hostile witnesses, such as Glenn Gaffney, former PDD&I Stephanie O'Sullivan, and the former head of the CIA's Office of Global Access, Douglas Wolfe. Dozens of whistleblowers are depending on you. I also encourage this committee to subpoena emails between former Senior Intelligence Officer David Grush and Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. These emails contain written evidence that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick is not being truthful with Congress regarding his knowledge of classified UAP controlled access programs. Thank you for your leadership and for your attention to this urgent matter.
Cool.
So that's the statement. There's a lot to unpack there, and it's that's a lot. That's a lot to put in one statement. And to go on record saying that you have multiple sources that have, I mean, he must be very confident in his information.
Not just that, he's just named the big bad boss. And he's just there on Reddit, like calling him out effectively. What a guy. What a guy.
Shout out to Matt
on
Ford.
That man. Yeah.
I just, it's kind of like, I think for people who have followed this topic for a long time, or a number of years or more, at least up until recently, one of the things that has seemed to always just be true is that the people in charge are shadowy people operating from back there somewhere that we never really see, or we never really get to know much about these individuals. They're sort of like the cigarette guy from X-Files or something. You know, they're just there.
It's a guy you've never heard of before. I'd never heard of that guy.
So I hadn't either. And I watched this video, and then I said, okay, Glenn Gaffney. Who's Glenn Gaffney? And I fell down the YouTube, Google rabbit hole, and I started to do some research on him. And what I found out was fascinating, and it raised an entirely new set of questions that I think we should get into today. But before we go there, just the notion that the emails exchanged between David Grush and Sean Kirkpatrick, if they were revealed, would prove that Kirkpatrick knowingly misled or lied to Congress. This is like an entirely separate conspiracy that is just as big almost as anything else we've been talking about. But in and of itself, AARO is just one big flypaper operation designed to trap whistleblowers before they can get to Congress. It's almost like the boss you have to defeat before you get to the big boss. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's what you'd set up if you wanted to capture. Like, it's the only option. If you want to stop whistleblowers from coming forward, you effectively give them the option to come forward, but you're just watching the whole time. But I had a particular question about that. So is it a flypaper set up in a covert manner, or is I don't want to have to go back and watch the statement again, but maybe you know, is Glenn Gaffney still on the advisory board for AARO?
The way I understand it, he is.
If not, let's assume he's replaced by his predecessor.
Or if the board is more informal than that, yeah. It could be something like an informal advisor.
So my thought is, are these whistleblowers willing to go forwards, but they do get caught in the flypaper and then get effectively silenced? Not so serious as to say they're all murdered, but maybe, you know, they're blackmailed or said or told to shut up by the powers that be. Or do they see people like Glenn Gaffney on the advisory board and they go, well, that's my boss. I'm not going to go forward to that company. I'm not going to go to AARO because I can see that my boss is on the advisory board.
Right.
So it's kind of like he's there as like an open warning. Like, guys, I'm here. Don't you dare say a word.
Yeah, it's like finding out your boss. It's like that open door policy that a lot of bosses claim to have. Like, it's an open door. Just come on in. You know, what's your grievance? What's going on? You don't like something around here? Just tell me. We'll be cool. We're family here. And then before you know it, you're training your replacement.
So you're saying your job's too easy. Does that mean I think I'm paying you too much then?
Yeah. Let's see. Jonathan Gibson says, yawn, evidence of cover-up, Perry Mason defense of the bloody obvious. The willing gullibility of this audience is noted. Loads of noise every few years with nothing new.
Refilled.
Well, we're refeeling it today. I get it. It's frustrating because it does seem that way. But dude, like, get real. We're getting new information every single week now. Like, freaking Matt Ford just named the guy in charge of the program. Like, he names 3 people at the absolute top of the pyramid. So what are you talking about? Like, nothing's ever revealed. This is enormous. So if this turns out to be accurate, which according to Matt, it is, I mean, he's certainly confident enough in his information to go forward publicly and make a video and release it and send it to Nancy Mace directly. That's a huge reveal because now he's put them on the map and he said, go get them. Use your subpoena power to go after these people and start getting some real answers. These are the architects of the cover-up program, of the reverse engineering program. These are the people that pull it off. Doug Wolf is the guy who ran the global access program that the CIA uses to go around the planet and get these things and bring them back. And Glenn Gaffney was in charge of the Directorate of Science and Technology at CIA. His job is to figure out how to take this recovered technology and parse it out to defense contractors so that it can be decoded and translated into something useful for our society. And I think what's most fascinating about this whole story is that not only are those huge reveals, which they are, but they open up an entirely different can of worms when you start to look into it. Because as you dig into a little bit more about who Glenn Gaffney is and what he does, one of the things that I wasn't expecting was how humanizing it is to see, first of all, put a face and a name to an individual at the top of this program. And two, when you start to research what they do and how they work, his organization, his group, In-Q-Tel, the group that he works with now, the Noble Reach Foundation, which we'll get into in a moment, you start to realize, or at least ask yourself the question, who is qualified to take a UFO and cut it into pieces and then hand those pieces out? How do you run that system? And then, like, you're supposed to take this thing that is ostensibly a million years beyond anything we have and make something useful out of it. And how do you do that in a way that doesn't ruin the planet or ruin the world or kill us all or get us into some kind of crazy war? And those were the questions that I found myself asking by the time I got to the middle of this rabbit hole. So I get it. I know it's frustrating for some people out there, and I see your comments, but like, we're getting a lot of news every 30 days now. It's coming on pretty fast. I think you'd be hard pressed to argue otherwise.
Perhaps part of the frustration is this arguably should be huge news, but it's seemingly it's a tiny step for some reason, and that's partly because we are getting so much information on a weekly basis at this point. But if we're talking about gullibility, Matt Ford's willing to put this on camera. He's willing to put his entire reputation on the line. He's sent a letter into Congress. I believe he believes what he's saying, and anybody is there now welcome to prove him wrong. And I'm not saying I believe it, but I'm not saying I don't disbelieve until the evidence is shown. I don't believe it or I'm sort of atheistic to what he's saying right here, but I'm willing to keep going. I'll go down this rabbit hole. I ain't got anything else to do. Let's do it. Let's get down the rabbit hole and find out if what he's saying means anything. And that's part of the journey at the end of the day.
I think that's the whole thing. Is like, once you start down this rabbit hole, let's do it. Let's dive in, and I'll walk you through. Join me on a journey of exploration and self-discovery as we go down the UFO rabbit hole and learn something about the Central Intelligence Agency, their venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel, the Noble Reach Foundation, and maybe a few things about ourselves along the way. I'm going to share a Chrome tab, and then I'm going to start to just walk you through this. So as far as I understand, Glenn Gaffney used to run this group, the Central Intelligence Agency Directorate of Science and Technology. So I've got this. It should be sharing now. I don't know if you could see it.
Yeah, just bear with a second.
This group is badass, for one thing. I mean, they're awesome. We'll go through a little bit about what they do, but this is their logo. The Directorate of Science and Technology, targeting technology and tradecraft, the 3 T's. And I guess leverage is the theme here. I don't know. So the Directorate of Science and Technology is the branch of the United States Central Intelligence Agency tasked with collecting and analyzing information through technological means and developing technical systems to advance the CIA's intelligence gathering. So they're the technology people inside the CIA. That's their whole wheelhouse. So one of the things that they're known for I'll just start with their purpose. The DS&T is one of 5 directorates within the CIA. The other 4 are administration, analysis, operations, and digital innovation. So when you break it down into those 5 pieces, this is one of those. DS&T plays a special role since it provides a wide range of data and intelligence to all other directorates. From here, the various other directorates can take this information, analyze it, and effectively procure it for their needs. Basically, that methodology seems like exactly what you would want. If you had a UFO and you needed to do something with it and take it apart and start sending it to places and have it digested and processed, this is the appropriate skill set and framework, it looks like to me. So among its early interests, this is interesting, was the use of drugs, hypnosis, and isolation in interrogation. These experiments were conducted under the program Project Bluebird, later known as Artichoke and MK Ultra. So these are the MK Ultra guys, which led to the suicide of Frank Olson, a U.S. Army scientist who was given a dose of LSD.
So we know they're of the highest moral integrity from the offset.
Right. So this is where it starts to get weird, because once you read MK Ultra, if you know anything about it, you start to go, oh, okay, so this is the dark side of the street.
Just as a side note, was it ever proven that Charles Manson was part of MK Ultra? I always heard that he was, but I don't know if I've ever seen evidence of that.
I don't know.
I'm going to have to give a quick Google in the background here.
They did spy satellite development. They came up with lithium-ion batteries. They invented those in the 1960s. That's when they invented lithium-ion batteries. The batteries that we use all over the world, it's changed our entire society. They invented that back in the 1960s to keep listening devices and spy equipment running longer. Their team did that. And then after that technology had matured and they perfected the chemistry, they commercialized that technology through their partnerships with private industry, and it became mainstream technology. So it goes on. Google Earth started out as something called Earth Viewer, which is a program within this directorate, and it was basically the CIA's Google Earth. Before there was the Google Earth, the CIA had that. They had, like 20 years before Google Earth, they had that. They used it to basically do analysis on an area where they were going to send people in, or they wanted to gather intelligence. They could just basically kind of see a real-time 3D picture of what it was they were looking at before they went in there. So that was all them, and they sold that software to Google, and that got spun into Google Earth, which is really interesting. And then at the very bottom of this, it says in 1967, DS&T's Operation Acoustic Kitty attempted to train a surgically altered cat wired with transmitting and control devices to become a mobile eavesdropping platform. And at the very bottom, in 1975, the DS&T funded remote viewing experiments at the Stanford Research Institute, say it with me, where remote viewers were asked to determine details about targets in the USSR. It was not judged to be a success. That's the group that Glenn Gaffney used to run. So here's Glenn Gaffney's LinkedIn page.
So far, they've got so many fingers in their pie, in that pie.
So then you go to his LinkedIn page and you look at it and you see, like, this is his LinkedIn page. He looks like worked with one of the producers for the Muppets or something. Like, he looks like like he makes children's television, or I don't know.
I said before we went live, he looks like a guy you want to hug.
Yeah, he looks like a cool uncle, or he's like, oh, it's Uncle Glenn. Still flying those model airplanes, aren't you, Glenn? I don't know, just I don't know. He looks like a nice guy. So, but immediately you're like, okay, I'm dealing with intelligence people. Who fucking knows? So he's a consultant, tech and strategy executive. His consulting firm is G2 Consulting Solutions. Chief Strategy Officer at the Noble Reach Foundation. We're going to look at them in a second. In-Q-Tel, Executive Vice President and Senior Fellow. In-Q-Tel is the venture capital arm of the CIA. At least that's what my research tells me. He says in an interview I watched with him that that's not exactly right, but more or less, I think we can think of it as that. What In-Q-Tel does is, let me share this page. In-Q-Tel identifies technologies that are at the absolute like bleeding edge, cutting edge of that field, of that whatever the field may be, and then they try to identify companies or entrepreneurs who are capable of bringing that technology from research into commercialization. They can take it from just theoretical research in a lab and convert that into usable real world technology. And they want to do it faster than anybody else. So what In-Q-Tel does is they're funded by the intelligence agencies of the United States apparatus. That money goes to In-Q-Tel, and then they selectively invest in these other companies. And from what I can, my understanding is they sometimes dabble in doling out technology or information. I imagine there's a lot of cross-pollination that happens with their work. But the idea being that they want to stimulate progress, technological progress, to happen at the same speed that it happens in the commercial sector, but they want to do it for government agencies. So this is their way to do that. It's about I think 25 years old is when they started the group. It's a really interesting company. It's funny, they say, oh, we're a nonprofit, so we don't make any money off of this, but it doesn't. That's kind of meaningless. Identify, evaluate, and leverage emerging commercial technologies for the U.S. national security, community, and America's allies. So again, now taking Matt at his word, if Glenn Gaffney truly was in charge of gatekeeping the legacy UAP program, and his role involved controlling the flow of recovered technology between companies and the CIA or whoever, this makes sense. Like In-Q-Tel, like the way that In-Q-Tel is like worded and set up, it seems like I'm starting to understand a little bit more about how one might have to think about a process like that, as complicated as it may be. So it says strategic technology insights, best-in-class capabilities, other services to our partners through our unique global investment platform. We're honored to serve the nation and help make the world a safer and better place. We call our mission Global Security Investing, as well as encompassing defense-focused startups and harnessing existing and over-the-horizon commercial technologies to sustain military and intelligence overmatch against adversaries. Global Security Investing emphasizes the importance of international reach and collaboration in a world where innovative venture-backed startups can now be found everywhere. Oh my God. So they have this website that goes into all this detail.
It's a private company as well. It's not publicly trading, so they don't have to give us much information.
Let's see here. Portfolio
about finances or anything.
Our team. So this is their team. It's kind of cool periodic table thing they did. Some of the people on the team. Here's Stephanie O'Sullivan. This is the person that Matt also mentioned in his video. Admiral Mike Mullen.
What did he say about Stephanie O'Sullivan in the video?
She was involved in the PDDNI.
So many acronyms.
I know, it's another group that was involved in this whole thing. So anyway, he's George Tenet. He's got all these. That's the board. So he worked with this company for, I think, 5 or 7. What does it say here? 5 years, 4 months, In-Q-Tel. And then he goes to the Noble Reach Foundation. So I looked into the Noble Reach Foundation, and this is what I found. Noble Reach. There we go. Let me go back. Noble Reach Foundation inspires the brightest minds in America to make a difference. We bring together the entrepreneurial agility of the private sector, the ideas of academia, and the scale and purpose of the public sector to drive innovation towards solving our nation's technological challenges by inspiring the next generation of mission-driven change makers. So it's a lot of very noble corporate speak. But they basically organized talent and entrepreneurs, and they kind of put these groups together to make things happen in various different sectors like biotech, energy, space, commercialization. So again, as I was going through this, I'm like, this, if you had your hands on the most cutting edge technology, this is where it would start to like get filtered through. It just seemed like that would make sense. So I started to ask myself a little bit about like, how would that work? Here's Glenn Gaffney. He's a fellow at the Noble Reach Foundation. I won't read through all of this stuff, but this is basically, people can go here if they want, check it out. How would such a process work? So I looked up this interview with him, and there is, we have just a couple minutes to go through a few clips of him talking, but this is through a group called Force for Good, which is a whole nother rabbit hole.
Is that the YouTube link you sent me earlier?
Yes, this is the.
I have it queued up.
There were a couple clips. The first timestamp was at about 17 and a half minutes. He starts to talk about global challenges. And
is that
just
what you
listen
want to start with?
Yeah, and I just want to preface this by saying that one of the things that leapt out at me at this moment when I was kind of digging through all this is that you want to, I think reflexively within the UFO community, we want to identify a villain and we want to point at the villain and go, that's the bad guy. We have to go get that bad guy. And certainly there are probably many villains involved in this whole story. And I'm not saying this guy is above the law at all. What I'm saying is, the more I watched him and listened to him speak, the more I realized how complicated this situation really is and how many moving parts there must be. It's got to be an astonishing challenge to do what he does. If what Matt describes him as being capable of and doing is what he's doing, then this is probably the guy you would want doing it. So with that in mind, let's play that first clip at 17 and 30 seconds.
I think it divides us even further if we keep thinking in terms of market,
yes,
right, and trade, right, and transactional interactions,
yes,
right. Free markets are great. I love free markets, and you know, we've let the market develop things, right? And I'm confident that the market left to its own will develop things that need to be developed over time, and I'm very encouraged by that. What I'm concerned about is that there's not enough time, right, to let that happen. We need to actually accelerate that process. And so, in my experience in working with other countries technically from the national security side, because none of us do any of this alone, right? We have great allies and great partners around the world who have come together, right, when it's absolutely necessary, focused on a mission, right, and building that trust by doing something important, mission-oriented together. Sure, mistakes get made, right? But you develop that relationship and you develop that trust, right? And it's a phone call that says, oh, I'm sorry, right? We missed that. You pick it up and you keep going, right? And so if we keep treating economic security, trade, national security, our interest, your interest, as merely bilateral or even multilateral transactions, and don't focus on what are the real things that are going to change the nature of the way we live on the planet, all right, then I think we're going to continue to fight this trust battle.
That's
right?
a really good message.
Right.
It's a really good message.
If we come together,
yes,
on these things that are so important, and we recognize the need to burden share, all right? Yes, supply chain issues. We've all realized
we could stop
there's
it
real
there.
supply
That's
chain
good.
issues.
So that whole interview is about 35 minutes long, and I encourage everyone to watch the entire thing. And I will link to it in the show notes. I haven't put it in there, but I'll do it. I'll try to do it while we're talking. So that's Glenn Gaffney. You know, that's a quick dive into who he is and a little bit about how he kind of thinks. So I guess the question is that I want to ask you, Xander, and everyone else is, how do you square that circle? Like, I think we all agree we want a safe, secure, prosperous future for humanity. I think that's what we're all after, broadly speaking. I think that, you know, the world's obviously very complicated and a dangerous place. There are a lot of crazy, unpredictable people in it. You naturally, we want the best and the brightest minds to be able to access this technology and try to figure out what to do with it. So at a certain point, like, how do you square that circle? How do you balance the interests of national security against the interests of like human well-being and human freedom of thought? Like, and is somebody like this the right person to be in charge of all that, or do we need more transparency?
So, I can't judge. He seems like a really competent guy. You have to say that from the start, but can't judge a character on only 2 minutes. But I'll probably watch the rest of this after we stream tonight. How do you square that circle? So the technology, absolutely. If it's dangerous technology, you can't you can't make it readily available to everybody. It's the case with any technology, any form of technology that's too powerful. You can't just give it to everyone with like open source. It just doesn't work that way. We wouldn't be able, I know we wouldn't be able to handle that as a species. We barely know what we're going to do with AI. And that's it's pretty open source as it gets at the moment. But should that stop you sharing fundamental truths about reality? Or are those fundamental truths so tied to the technology itself that it makes it impossible to tell you any part of the truth? So say this is purely an example and completely off the top of my head, but what if part of that technology is a form of consciousness interface? We've heard it talked about loads of times. When it comes to piloting UAPs, you somehow interface or integrate with the craft on a consciousness level. What if the truth about consciousness, for example, would lead many people to realize, oh, well, if that's the case, then I'm far more powerful than I previously thought. What if you really did find out on a fundamental level that consciousness really does control things? Then all of a sudden you've got 7-8 billion people exploring consciousness to a very high degree, to the point where you may end up with thousands of people that are able to wield extremely powerful technology, and they haven't had the decades that these guys have had to really contextualize it and make a formal plan for it. And that's probably my initial thought on the whole thing. But fundamental truths, there's almost a bit of a right to fundamental truth in my eyes. You have a right to know who your parents are, and you have a right to know like what your place is in the universe. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. And I think that's where we can all agree that I think at a certain point, the fundamental truths about the universe are one thing. I think what I'm getting at with Mr. Gaffney here is the actual practical engineering part of the problem of like, we've got this disk, let's just say, or whatever it may be. Like, let's just use a disk as an example. With a technology in it that is so far, in tens of thousands of years at best, a million years or more, who knows? Fundamentally just completely different than anything we understand. And now we have to do something with it. And with our current system, the way our planet runs now, like, you've got to go through, you have to use the system you have. So you have to take this thing apart and you have to decide who gets what. Someone's got to make that call. And then you have to base that decision off of a lot of different things, like who can you trust and who is secure and who has the best expertise and the best institutional ability to like do something useful with it. And someone's got to manage all of that. And that's a very practical, logistical problem. So on one hand, it means that there's got to be an enormous paper trail. I mean, just a recovery operation by itself, in and of itself, must involve hundreds of people, dozens of aircraft, ground vehicles, specialized equipment, all kinds of stuff. The paper trail must be huge. So at the very top of all of this, the architects, the people who are running it, you want them to be the most qualified, most like on your side people that you can find. So I get that. I understand that. And it's like, well, but is it their responsibility to come to you and say, by the way, I just want everybody to know that aliens are real. And because, or does by doing that, do they open a can of worms where it's like, well, now when the cat finally does come out of the bag or the genie is out of the bottle, as you said, the technology is just incomparably more powerful than we're prepared to deal with.
Even the most basic forms of this technology are world-changing. Only purely because of the fact that we are an entire world economy is based on finite resources and fossil fuels. So overnight, if you're told that, none of that matters, we don't need any of that, and we can have more power, that's completely upends everything overnight.
So in this conversation, in the clip that we just listened to, one of the things that he says is we have to stop thinking about everything in bilateral sort of transactional terms. Like, everything's a transaction between parties. We have to start thinking about a world where the problems that we're dealing with are dealt with in a shared way, a global burden sharing kind of a way. And it sounded like he was noodling around the edges of, they go on to talk about climate change and other issues that are part of this larger conversation that they're having. But he also said something very briefly. He said, if we let the free market do what it does, in the fullness of time, it would probably develop all of the solutions we need. But we don't have the time. That's what he says. I don't believe we have that time. We have to accelerate that process. Now, I'm reaching here. This is a big, big reach, but I'm going to make the reach. And I'm just going to say, like, I've said it on this channel before, if you knew that there were enough converging mega problems or mega threats that eventually, like, something of a civilization threatening existential level event was imminent, maybe if you were in charge of like accelerating the technological development of your entire civilization, how do you do that? You can't just like flip a switch and do it. You have to like, there's got to be a way you slowly over time like build up the civilization's ability so that eventually when we get to a certain point, we can use the technology at the level it's designed for. Does that make sense? Or am I just rambling at this point?
Are we talking about disseminating technology such as free energy?
Right. Like you can't just say like, we've got it.
Yeah.
And here it is. And like, then what? Like you're just going to hand them out to people? Like there's got to be a practical flow chart that you go down. Okay, well now we have to figure out, where do we build it? How do we get it to people? How do we make it useful so it's not dangerous? What can we...
So the way I see it, it's almost a bit like a vaccine, because let's be honest, the world is sick. Like we're pumping stuff that shouldn't be pumped into the atmosphere. Like we are doing something that's very, well, arguably, you can debate this all you want, I don't care, but arguably we're pumping stuff into the atmosphere we shouldn't be doing. So the world is gonna, might not be sick yet in your opinion, but it's gonna get sick at some point. We need a vaccine for that. And, you know, we've just been through a pandemic. We saw the rollout of a vaccine. It wasn't overnight, but it was, to be honest, it was pretty damn good.
It was almost overnight. I mean, in the grand scheme of things.
Months, like we got, you know, it was rolled out on a priority basis. This would be exactly the same way energy transition could happen. It needs to go to those that need it more than anybody else. And because it's free energy, it is technically far cheaper than a vaccine. So I think it would happen quite a lot quicker than anybody really thinks, and so I think it could be a lot smoother than people think as well. Absolutely, but I remember sitting at home during lockdown, just thinking, you know, in like 2 months I'm eligible to have a vaccine. And whether or not, I don't care whether you took it or not, it's not part of the conversation, but at least the option, like the infrastructure was placed there in a timely manner, quite organised. Everybody that wanted a vaccine had the opportunity to take one. If it's free energy, then, you know, providing people don't think it's some sort of play to get control of your assets, I think most people will want free energy.
I think it's like, so if you do take the time to watch this full conversation, what he talks about next is artificial intelligence, and then from there he gets into energy. And his comments on energy are very interesting because he says essentially that the problems with the fusion technology that we've all been talking about for so many years now are no longer theoretical problems. They're just engineering problems. And he says that basically the problems are being solved now with the help of AI. And, you know, at a certain point, the problems will go from being just engineering problems to rollout. Like, how do you actually roll it out? And you start to get the sense from listening to the broader discussion. And if you look into the Force for Good group, and they put out a 120 something page PDF report, which I've skimmed, and it's very interesting. But they basically start to describe a world where you have humanoid robotics that are capable of doing most human labor. You have unlimited, mostly free energy, almost free. Like maybe maintenance or, you know, there's some cost involved, but it's more or less free. And then you have unlimited intelligence, AI, or AGI or SI, depending on who you talk to. Those three things create a world that is not compatible with our current concept of how our society works.
Oh,
it's
completely incompatible. 20
so
years
how do you,
away, it's completely different. Everything has to be.
So that's what he's talking about. Yeah. That's the thing that occurred to me as I watched it. I'm like, that's what he's saying. He's saying in very simple terms, he's like, we have to be ready because it's going to happen no matter what. So how do you think globally? How do you work with a partner like China or Russia? How do you work with all this global community for something that's going to change literally the way that we exist on this planet?
So even somebody,
fuck, that's heavy.
Even somebody as sort of mainstream as NVIDIA, there was a showcase. You know, every year they do a conference and they show off their latest tech. They said, I think it was this year, and I won't play the video because it's too long, but they said they'd basically reinvented the computer over the last 12 months. They said, you know, there's like all these different inputs that go into redesigning a chipset, and now they've just got AIs writing that go into the chipset that then trains another AI to then create the next chipset. And they're saying it's kind of like exponential because you've got AIs writing more AIs who are writing more AIs, and they've even got like AI agents. So they've got AIs that are specialized for certain things. They've got AIs that will go and choose the right agent AI to then write the correct AI for the next. So everything is just being taken over entirely by AIs at this point. So you touched on another story that I thought I sent you the Kissinger thing, right? Did you look at that? The Kissinger thing. I don't think we were going to originally talk about this, but let's see if I can pull up that article real quick. His AI warning from beyond the grave. That basically in his new book, which was co-written with Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google. He outlines a future where this is a really. Just before we get into this, I've seen the chat kind of devolve into some sort of weird COVID argument. I'm not here to say whether COVID was real or not, whether the vaccine was real or not. I'm not interested in that debate whatsoever. I'm not taking a side either. I was just drawing a comparison between the seemingly organized and quick rollout of whatever vaccine you think that was, and the fact that we could maybe do the same with some form of free energy technology based on a priority queue system kind of thing. I'm not taking a position in COVID whatsoever.
And I don't think I feel like that conversation's already we should that's just so far in the rear view mirror. Like,
let's argue about it on the next pandemic. I don't
like, you know what we should be talking about the ICBM that Putin just launched at Ukraine and the nuclear escalation that's going on right now with that whole conflict, which is terrifying. We don't have the kind of time to go through all that stuff today. So we're just keeping it light, talking about the CIA whistleblowers being silenced. So I'm torn because on the one hand, it's like whistleblowers need to be allowed to blow the whistle. We need transparency. We absolutely need transparency when it comes to this issue. We do need a clear answer on the are we alone or not phenomenon so that we can, move on. Even though we all know the answer, we do need the government to like take a position on this in a more direct, official way. So I think we can, just move forward. But barring that, the technology is there. It's got to go somewhere. Someone's got to figure out how to do it. And these are the people that, according to Matt and his sources, are in charge of doing it. And if you look at the last century of progress, we're talking about vaccines for a second. I'm going to go back to it, but not in a, don't kill me, guys. But a couple of months, like 200 years ago, if you cut your finger, you would die. If you got an infection, you stub your toe, then you just die.
Oh, the biggest thing I've seen lately is the whole fluoride in water thing. Like, people really underestimate how bad dental hygiene can be. And the reason you have fluoride in your water was literally because people's dental hygiene was so awful. It was overwhelming healthcare systems. And that's not to say that would happen today. People are a lot more aware. But when it was first introduced, absolutely, people were just not brushing their fucking teeth. And that was causing people to die.
Like the rate of technological progress over the last century is beyond astonishing by any metric that you choose to look at. Like, I got LASIK surgery 20 years ago, and I was legally blind. And then I walked into a room and I sat under a machine and I looked at a red dot. And in less than 10 minutes, I walked out and I had 20/20 vision in both eyes. And that's been that good for over 2 decades. That's crazy. I'm just thinking, like, one practical example that's actually affected like my personal life, to say nothing about everything else we can see happening. I mean, we've gone from the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk to driving probes on Mars, and the stuff that they're doing now. I mean, the Noble Reach Foundation, if you look into the investments that they've made, or you go to In-Q-Tel and you look at their stuff under space exploration, the space commercialization stuff that they've invested in companies that have done some amazing things. Like, they have robotic satellites that can basically navigate around Earth in orbit from one satellite to another and do surgery on broken satellites or reposition them. Just beyond cool technology. And you just have to say, well, at some point, if we want to get to that future, someone's got to build it. So we have to process it through our existing system. And maybe this is the way it gets done. But I think the issue is, at the end of the day, you have a very small group of people that are more or less unknown to us, out of the reach of any kind of regulation or oversight, and they are making decisions on who gets what technology, who gets to leapfrog all of the competition because they get the piece of the flying saucer or whatever it may be. So you have a problem there where you have this small cadre of people making those decisions. At the end of the day, you're choosing winners and losers, more or less. And on the other side of it, you have a group of people who are primarily and solely focused on security and safety and intelligence and this sort of paranoid mindset of like, how can we protect ourselves from every conceivable possible threat? And maybe what's necessary are some other seats at that table where maybe we have a philosopher, and maybe we have someone who is an indigenous person, and maybe we have, a few other voices that can basically weigh in on that decision and say, well, hold up. Should we really just be letting 4 guys from the CIA make all of these decisions? Or are there other voices that could have something to add? And of course there are.
There's somebody in the chat that knows me in person. I know that. I don't know who they are because they've got a different username. But they've referred to me as Jones, which is what people that know me in real life call me.
You call him Dr. Jones.
I was about to say something. Yes, that's it. I don't know. Is that Charlie Mason? He'll let me know if that's Charlie Mason. Glenn Gaffney. He's your next target. Charlie Mason's the next target. What was I going to say? I think, yes, that person that's elected by the people to serve the people should potentially be the guy to decide whether or not we're ready to know the truth. Am I wrong in assuming that, people choose the leader of the free world once every 4 years? That guy should know everything. It doesn't care who it is. That guy should know.
I don't know. Depends on the guy.
Yeah, it depends on the guy.
It really depends on the guy.
Look, I think if that, it doesn't matter who it is, if that person is voted leader of the free world to represent you as a human, and in your case as an American, that person should be read in on everything.
Well, yes, this is, so you make a great point. The other half of this problem, right, is like it's so classified that no one knows what anyone knows. Like, who knows? Yeah. Who is at the top? So does someone have a complete picture, or is everyone just playing with a partial deck of cards here and no one really has the full picture? We just don't know who's in charge of anything, and that's the real issue at the core of it. So I guess if Matt is saying that these are the people like Doug Wolf and Glenn Gaffney and Stephanie O'Sullivan, he says, Congress should wield their subpoena power and go get these people and get them to answer questions.
I think.
Do we ever see that happening?
What I'm trying to get at is, who have we? I say we. I'm always using the royal we because it's always Americans. I don't have a vote in America, but let's just. Who are we as humans electing to be our representative that knows everything? I think we have a right to at least have a representative there on our behalf that is duly elected by the people to say, okay, now I know everything, and I've been elected, I've been given the power. Do I think the people that elected me are in a position where they'd be able to handle the information that I've been given, or at least some of the information I've been given? I think that is reasonable, rather than a bunch of unelected people who all went to school together. None of them went to the
Right.
University of Miami,
Right. That's fair. Yeah, there are not many hurricanes in there. Okay, so if you want to take one more step down the rabbit hole, this is worth a look. And on to your point, this is not diverting from your point, but let me go to Force for Good. Okay. I'm at the very, just noodling on the very edge of understanding what this group is all about. But Force for Good appears to be a nonprofit. This is their slogan, their tagline: transforming capitalism for a secure, sustainable, and superior future. This is very that's a strong statement. What's a superior future? And who decides what's superior about it? And technology driving the transition to a superior future. This group, here's the still from the interview that we just watched a clip of with Glenn Gaffney. This is the group that interviewed him. And it's seems to be involved in strategically figuring out how technology can play out within the current framework of capitalism to make things happen. And I don't know what I'm about to say to be true, but I have a feeling that this group represents a lot of billionaires whose names you will never hear spoken aloud in public. I don't know that, but I just get this sense that it's just such a weird vibe coming off of this website, institutions, people. And I just wonder if they put out this report. It's a 120 page something PDF, which I just downloaded it. I'm on a list now. And in it, they identify these like 9 areas of focus over the next few decades that they're going to work on, and how the bleeding edge technology is going to apply and affect all these different things. And it just makes you wonder, like, okay, well, if it's not happening transparently, like, first of all, what would transparency look like? Like, if we could get access to the technology, and let's say it's stored in some facility at a Lockheed Martin site somewhere, like, what do we actually want? Do we want it to be like open the warehouse doors? They go in, they take out the crates, they send them over to a different lab, and then like we have a live video feed on what they do with it next. Like, it's probably all going to happen somehow like this in some opaque way behind the scenes. And I have a feeling that just within the disclosure community, we don't really know exactly what it is that we're asking for just yet. Other than the president coming out and saying aliens are real and they're here, I guess. But in terms of the actual technology part of it, what do we want? Does that make sense? Like, what is the actual ask?
I think it's important for everybody to understand the implications of the technology. Let me just close that.
And by the way, we should mention, do you still want to do some calls? How do you feel about doing calls?
We can do some calls. Yeah, absolutely.
If anybody wants to call, get into our Discord and get into the waiting room.
Yeah, there's a live call-in section on the left. There's a little read this first section. Please do as it says, because it makes my life a lot easier. But then, yeah, I'll join you in the waiting room and get you on live. We'd love to hear your thoughts about. Let's hear it for Glenn Gaffney, everybody. He's the guy.
Well, let's hear it for Matt Ford too for coming out with the info. I mean, I for one, and just to circle back to that, he dropped that, and then it's like, I don't want to say crickets, but I don't hear anybody else really bringing it up, and I felt like that's enormous. That is enormous news.
It would have been easier if the person he'd name dropped was already famous or already known within the community. I'm sure some nerds knew somewhere that Glenn Gaffney was a guy to watch out for, but it's the first I'd heard his name. And I'm pretty into stuff, so yeah, the fact that it wasn't, President George Bush Sr., for example, it wasn't somebody like him. Maybe that's what wasn't so inviting when he was talking, because it was just a name that nobody had heard before. Everybody Googled and came across all these weird shell companies that you've shown. Like, the jargon on those companies is like bringing the technology of the superhuman AI into a future where everybody is one. And it's like, okay, great. That makes no sense whatsoever. But there's billionaires on the boards of directors of these companies, and they're all private. None of them are public trading companies, and one of them is purportedly the investment arm of the CIA. Because of course the CIA needs an investment arm.
And their campus is unbelievable. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, I think there's no getting around it. Like there is a pipeline. It already exists from recovery teams getting the craft and bringing it back for analysis, and the bits and pieces of that craft making their way to various companies to be analyzed. And then something else has to happen. Like, you've got to get the theory, then you have to figure out the practical applications, the practical engineering, the experience required and the technical expertise required. And I'm sure a lot of it is just inventing new technologies just to figure out how to deal with the new technologies that you're looking at. You almost have to like stair step your way up to some of this stuff. It would seem. I guess we'll never get a full picture of what it is they actually know. And that's probably naive to expect. But on the other hand, government isn't the only group that can interact with these beings. I mean, there must be ways that as civilians, we can leverage technology and the expertise within our own community to figure out ways to make contact or communicate, or, this is what Greer talks about with CE5 and others have mentioned. And maybe what's necessary is like more organization on this side of things.
You know what's strange? You mentioned Greer, and I presumably you'd also say that Bledsoe is sort of in that realm of communication with NHI and stuff. I had it in the show notes from maybe 3 weeks ago. We had a caller that was talking about, and I wish I had it still, because he deserves credit for the question. But is the telepathic element, because we've had orbs recently. Orbs was a big thing over the past month or so. Is telepathy and communication with these, whatever they are, is that the hot thing that's going to hit? Because we had a guy in Congress testifying under oath, maybe, what was it, last week now? A week ago, that talks about that, and I'm talking about Lou Elizondo, and the fact that he's talked about telepathy not in front of Congress and not under oath, because he didn't answer any questions. They didn't ask him any questions, but presumably he would stand by what he said when he talks about telepathy and orbs and astral projection and things like that. And you've got the other sort of area of ufology, which is Greer and Bledsoe, who are all about contacting NHI. Is that going? And Bledsoe was there at the hearings last week. I don't know. I don't remember any pictures of Greer, but I know Bledsoe was there. So is that the next big thing? Is that going to be? Do we potentially see in the next hearing somebody like Greer or Bledsoe? Because that would be wild.
I don't think they'll talk to Bledsoe. I don't know that they would, because his story is. I don't doubt that what he says is he's recounting his experience to the best of his ability, but I don't know that, like, when you know that story, when you read it or listen to him tell it, at the end you're just kind of like, okay, my jaw hits the floor, you just blew my mind, but like I don't know what to do with that. It's just so crazy, and I take him at his word. So I'm not doubting Mr. Bledsoe's story. I believe that that he experienced some truly amazing things. But in terms of like testifying before Congress, what Matt put on the radar is like, these are the names, like here are the guys. And he sent that to Nancy Mace. Like, you need to go call Glenn Gaffney, get him down here. Like, people in the community are saying, well, where's the firsthand witness? Where are the people that actually know something? Well, he's saying that's the guy. There's your answer. Go get him, and while you're at it, go get Sean Kirkpatrick's emails with David Grush, because you're going to find out that he was full of shit too. And if you can demonstrate that, then the consequences for Mr. Kirkpatrick are out of this world. So it's like the whole tapestry starts to unravel if you start at the top and you go after the individuals that Matt named, providing, of course, that his sources are giving him accurate information and everything is as he says it is. I just don't, I'm kind of jaded at this point. I don't know if Congress will ever have the kind of power that it's really going to take to unravel the military industrial complex. After all, that's what we're talking about, right? I mean, they have unlimited money, unlimited resources, and they've got an 80-year head start.
I think to maybe give the people in Congress a bit of a break, there have been incentives set up over the last 50 years that they're there to keep them in line more than anything else. It pays to follow the leader in government, and it's the same in the UK. It's like everybody must follow the leader, and if you do that, maybe your next job is in the cabinet, or it's, attorney general or something like that. And
well, that's true. Look at the Trump administration, all the people who trashed him for all this time. And now he's like, you get to be the ambassador to Ireland. You get to be, he's just, it's always like that. We have some people in the waiting room. Should we go to a call?
Yeah, I'm just getting in touch with them now. Zoltan, are you there? Let's drop him live. Zoltan, are you there? I know Android Paranoid will be there. Hold on. Android Paranormal, are you there? Maybe not.
Maybe not. Android, you're live.
Oh, wait, Zoltan's back. Hold on.
Oh, Zoltan's back. Or Android, yeah, or
Right, we'll
Android,
get
you're
both
gone.
in. Zoltan, you're live, mate.
We lost him.
Hello?
Zoltan, now you're live.
Zoltan, are you there? And just like that, he walked out of our lives.
Zoltan, yo, are you there?
We lost him.
We've not lost him. Hang on. Let's try Android again. Android, are you there? I think he's here. All right, you can
Hello?
talk, Clint. He'll know. Yeah, there we go.
Hey, there he is.
All right, you guys can hear me all right?
Yeah, Android, you're live. What's up, man?
First, I just want to thank you guys for the shirt, man. I really appreciate it. It's awesome.
Oh, aren't they the best?
Yeah, it's a great logo. It's really awesome. I love it.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it, man. Glad you like it.
Yeah, but I also just wanted to say I kind of see Glenn Gaffney's point in that little piece of the video you guys played. Yeah, I mean, if there's a, breakthrough technology, I mean, the open market might be too slow to bring it to, government or to, out of research phase before another country before it's too late. So he makes a good point there. But yeah, I think that's still not an excuse to, hide it from the reality of our situation from the public. There's no reason for to not be upfront with us about the whole situation.
Well, who would you say is the person, if you had to pick one person whose responsibility it is to come forward and share that information, who is it? And how much are they really responsible for sharing with us? And where do they draw the line? Where do you stop?
Yeah, that's a really, really hard question. I guess that's, what they wanted to do with that 9-person panel that, Mike Turner got, out of that UAP, act, watered it down and took that piece out. So that would have been great if they would have been able to do that, and have a 9-person panel with people like, I mean, David Grush or Richard Dolan, just various different people, maybe, some highly acclaimed, scientists, sociologists, you definitely need multiple different perspectives on where to draw the line, probably.
That's a great point. You're right. The disclosure amendment, as it was originally written, did spell out a procedure that was really detailed for that information to get revealed and I guess reviewed and done so in a more transparent way. But do you think?
Yeah.
Is it even possible that makes? Does that ever? Do you think that ever makes it through, or are we just, spinning our wheels with this? I just feel really jaded lately.
Yeah, I think it's possible something similar could make it through. I'm not sure if it's gonna. I doubt it's gonna make through in its current form. But I think it's possible something could make it through. I'm just not sure what. Because we did push something through last year about with the archives. Having all the departments having to send what they have to the archives, anything that's not, I guess, classified. So that's at least one step in the right direction. It's a very small step, but I think that the hearings have been depressing for a lot of people. I think one thing that gave me a little bit of a glimmer of hope actually is I posted it in that super chat, this interview that Dr. Kozlowski did with the mainstream media. There was a private meeting between him and various mainstream media outlets, and this time News Nation was invited to it. Last time, when Dr. Kirkpatrick was the head of it, he was not. The News Nation was not invited. They were not allowed to come. This time, with Dr. Kozlowski, head of AARO, they allowed News Nation to come to this private media briefing. And News Nation is now the only media outlet. They posted the full audio of that entire, it's like 20, 25 minutes, I think, interview he did with the media. And it's much, much better than the hearing he did. I mean, he obviously was like, I don't know, seemed kind of nervous during the hearing, but during this media briefing, he seemed very confident. And there were some journalists who tried to seem to like pigeonhole him into saying it's breakthrough technology from an adversary, but he refused on multiple attempts to say, he said, no, we don't have any evidence of that. No, it's not that, or he, there's no, none of these, 700 and some cases have any evidence of that. And he says, we just want to keep an open mind that it really could be anything.
I think in the Immaculate Constellation documents, one of the most interesting things that jumped out. Did you read those all the way through? Did you have a chance?
No, not all of it. No,
they
pieces
talk
of it. Yeah,
they talk about ARVs and RVs, alien reproduction vehicles and reproduction vehicles, in that document. And the way that it's worded is such that they're not that our government and our intelligence apparatus is able to track these, see them, track them, identify their areas where they operate, and that the alien reproduction vehicles are not necessarily ours. They're somebody else's. And so the implication being, I think, that someone else has a breakthrough technology and it's not us. So someone else has it, could be a private group, could be another country, could be all kinds of different possibilities, I guess. But one gets the sense that the situation is a lot more unstable and complicated than we think it is on the surface. And I wonder, like, I'm putting my money on catastrophic disclosure. I feel like whatever's going to happen is going to happen regardless of what Congress does or does not do. Do you get that sense that we're in some kind of like a feedback loop now where something is accelerating the push towards disclosure sooner or later? I mean, what I'm hearing from the people I'm talking to is that something big things are going to start dropping in another couple of weeks that will continue to blow our minds. Maybe not it won't be the final nail in the coffin for the whole cover up, but we're going to start to see more and more breaking news events that are going to be bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually there's some kind of a crescendo. What's your vibe? Do you get that sense from watching the news and paying attention to this space? Or do you think something else is going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's pretty accurate, actually, because I actually on Twitter I had Matthew Pines. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the. He said something online about some of Trump's appointees, and I don't remember what he exactly said, but I said something about, is this just coincidence that Trump's appointing not one, not two, but like several, like 3 or 4 people who've spoken out publicly in the past for UFO disclosure or at least government transparency on issues in general, and he replied back with simply not a coincidence. And so I trust his opinion. I mean, he has a lot of connections inside the government because he's, a VP of a very close, big government contracting group for, cybersecurity, I believe. So he's got a lot of connections. If he says it's not coincidence, I agree with him. It is too many to be a coincidence. So I think they're planning something. And I think that there's definitely a plan behind the scenes. I think there has been a plan behind the scenes even before the Trump administration won, because Lou had been saying for a long time, for his mixed feelings as people have about him, and it's not just Lou, but other people too, like Danny Sheehan, have been saying for a long time, that there's work going on behind the scenes, and I think most of the prominent figures in UFO world have been working together, like Lou, Mellon, Gary Nolan, maybe Grush, Sheehan, all of them. I think they've all been working together, and Stratton, I think, even further in the background. I think he even as well. They've all been working towards, like, okay, plan A didn't get them to disclose, let's go to plan B. Plan B didn't get them to fully disclose, let's go to plan C. I think they're literally conspiring together against the government, basically. But they're trying to do it through democracy and legal means to prevent themselves from going to jail.
Yes. Oh, totally. I think you're absolutely right. I absolutely, that feels like exactly what it maps onto what we're seeing, right? It's like Richard Dolan talks about it as it's a faction that's broken free from there's a cover up group and there's a pro disclosure group, and the pro disclosure group has just gotten organized and they're pushing forward. But it's also been said that this could all be one big orchestrated piece of drama, like a WWE match where we're watching it all play out. But at the end, there's going to be a reveal one way or the other. And maybe this is all part of just negotiating for some kind of immunity when it all does come out. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be, I almost want to stop using the word disclosure, because disclosure almost it requires some official level of government participation that we just haven't seen yet. Maybe it's reveal is the better word. A big reveal. Something is going to just happen, whether or not we just can't control it. Like when the Soviet Union collapsed, they knew it was going to collapse way before it did. But when it happened in real time. And it was like watching it happen, watching the Berlin Wall come down. That changed the entire map of the earth. The whole strategic situation was changed in a period of days. And our whole global order shifted as a result of that. This would be on the magnitude of something like that or bigger. And I imagine that there's going to be a small group of very well-positioned investors that will know way in advance what's coming, and they will be the people that somehow come out on top. I just feel like that's inevitable. So it's like whether or not you get Congress to go in there and find the information or get the technology, I don't know if that's even, we might already be past that at this point. And maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing. I don't know. Thanks for the call.
I know that Chris, you're welcome. I mean, I know that Chris Bledsoe's claims are very big and huge, and I'm biased. I believe what he says because I have had experience very similar to him with seeing or in encountering a being that basically turned into an orb and disappeared. I know it sounds crazy, but just a summary, I'll post about it maybe in the Discord chat in more detail. But yeah, I walked out like in 2008, my back door, just to let the dog out at like 3 a.m. in the morning before going to bed, and there's something walking in the backwoods, and you can tell it's bipedal, by the sound of it. It's not like a scampering animal. And all of a sudden, it stops walking, and I think it's like a burglar at first. I don't think anything paranormal. And this super bright white light, like the scorching light of a welder's torch, appears like 20, 30 yards, like 20, 25 yards from me, and just on the outside of my fence line. And there's a fence you can see through. It's just 3 posts, and just appeared out of nowhere. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew bigger, to the like size of a basketball. My dog took off sprinting towards it, and I still at this time was thinking, oh, it's a burglar with a LED flashlight, even though the light was like no light I'd ever seen before back in 2008. Then when my dog started sprinting towards it, it just flickered or sparkled and then rapidly shrunk. Didn't turn off. It like rapidly shrunk down to nothing and was gone. I turned on like the spotlight floodlights we had in the backyard, waved my hand in front of the motion sensor immediately. There was nothing there. And even if something was fast enough to run away, there was, I would have heard it run away on the dry leaves it was walking on in the forest. So it matches really similar with stuff he's experienced, and I think that there's some definitely kernel and truth in the experiences he's had.
He's talked about some big event that's on the horizon that is pushing all of this forward. And I got to be honest with you, news, Russia is threatening to use hypersonic missiles against targets in Ukraine and Poland, American targets. The escalation in the Ukraine conflict has just gone off the rails in the last 72 hours. Things are accelerating so much faster. The United States authorized the use of landmines. We're sending landmines over. That's a new development. This is a new thing. We're authorizing the use of long-range missiles into Russia and to Russian territory. There's 10,000 North Korean troops fighting in Ukraine or in Russia and Ukraine in that conflict. Putin is now saying that he's going to authorize, they're lowering their threshold for a nuclear response against the United States and our allies. I'm no geostrategic military expert, but Brett is, and I'm sure Brett, and we have many in our audience who are. I just can't shake the feeling that we are on a runaway freight train that is just picking up speed, and we're teetering on the brink of some kind of nuclear fucked up situation. It just feels like that. And I when I hear people like Chris Bledsoe make the predictions that he's made, and I hear others in the UFO UAP community talk about some kind of pending event. Danny Sheehan says there's going to be an intervention. We hear this talk. It's hard when I try to, as a parent and as I try to maintain a well-adjusted mindset and not look at the negative news too much and focus on, the people around me. But from time to time, when you look away from the UAP conversation and you look at the just global news, it's really hard to miss some of the really scary shit that is happening right now. And if ever there were going to be an intervention, any minute now would be a great time, because we're on the cusp of something really disastrous happening, and I don't know how much further we can creep towards the edge before we go over. You have China saying they're going to take back Taiwan by, what was the year? They said they wanted to be ready to go. The situation is dire. It doesn't look like it's getting any better. And when you hear somebody like Glenn Gaffney in that interview say, I don't believe we have the time for private industry to develop the solutions necessary, even though I have all the faith in the world that they could do it given enough time. We don't have that kind of time anymore. Well, look at what that man, look at his background, look at his previous job experience, look at the type of work that he does. That's the guy telling you there's not enough time. That's weird. So I'm not trying to draw connections between things that shouldn't be there, but I think if you step far enough back away from all of this and you start to look at it with a more objective mindset, it becomes clear that whether or not Congress does whatever they're going to do, what's really going to move the needle for us as a community is a black swan event, something just out of left field that no one sees coming that is going to change the course of this whole discussion once and for all. And short of that, we might just be here, jerking around with congressional hearings for the next 25 years at the rate that we're going.
Clint, I'm just going to bring in Darth Strife here.
I think it's a very accurate assessment of the whole situation for sure. It's definitely it doesn't seem like there's really any good solution to the whole global situation. That's for sure. It seems like no matter what solution you pick, there's definitely some big losers on that solution.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a good situation.
That's a fact. Well, thank you for the call, Android. We're going to move on to another caller, but thanks for coming back on, man.
Yeah, I'm going to bring in
Have a good one. You're welcome.
You too. Enjoy the shirt.
Yeah, because he's got to go very soon. So I wanted to bring him in because he's been waiting very patiently. So here he is now.
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, Darth, what's up?
I'm good. So I heard you guys talking about Richard Dolan a little while ago. I don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to keep it brief. I recently watched that Transmedium documentary he did. It was excellent. It was an excellent documentary. I'm Puerto Rican, so it was just really funny for me, and it close to home. So I want to do an impression of Richard Dolan in the documentary. It's bilingual, so he's hearing one of the native Puerto Ricans explain an alien encounter. So he like basically sees an alien in the middle of the road in the middle of the night. And Richard Dolan's reaction to him is just hilarious to me. Shout out to Pavel, by the way. Psicoactivo.
Oh, Psicoactivo's the best.
Yes. So, all right. So the guy, he's just explaining, he's like, Chano, pero yo vi esa cosa en la calle, era un hombre bien pequeño, yo no sé, yo pensé que estaba loco. And Richard Dolan's sitting across from him and his legs are crossed and he's just got his hands on his knee. And he's like, I think Manolo's testimony is very interesting, and I know small town people, and I don't doubt that Manolo thinks he saw what he saw. Very, very, very impactful testimony. I wouldn't doubt that there's other people in this town that have seen stuff like this. All right, that's it. Thank you so much, guys. Love the show.
Thanks, Darth. That was great. That was a great Richard. God, that's such a niche. What a niche impression that is.
Dude, I'll call back some other time and do Jeremy Corbell. I'm pretty good.
You got to do them all. Do Corbell, Knapp.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a contest.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Keep looking up, guys. Bye.
Thanks, man. Oh, that was great. Dolan, we have such a niche little world here, and like this just so funny. Like it's exactly what he sounds like. He's so measured, and the thing is though, he's so smart, he's so educated, and he's so like steeped in this topic for so long that when Dolan speaks, you just can't help but listen, and you're like, And he makes like everything is so measured out and precise. He's one of my favorite people to listen to in this space.
All right, next up we got Zoltan.
Zoltan,
you there, Zoltan? You say
hi there,
hello.
folks.
There we go.
what's up, Zoltan? How you doing?
Hi there, folks. Sorry, I had some issues with the mic last time.
It's all right.
I'm here now.
What's on your mind?
Thank you for. Oh, a lot of things. So, first of all, thank you guys for bringing up this whole channel and let us keep together. Sorry for my English. I'm Hungarian, so I live next to the Ukraine border. So for the last issue, when you talked about the war in Ukraine, so we are heavily impacted of it. But this is not the topic I want to talk about. So we are here for UFOs, We are all here to have fun. And first of all, last time when with the episode with Simon Holland, I talked about that somehow quantum communications relate to some sort of not quantum communications. Sorry, telepathy and precognition is somehow related to quantum communications, and it's maybe a sense of intuition, maybe, and I think it's in all of us, and we can study it, we can learn it, we can manage it, and we can, when a parent, for example, a mother sees a child in danger, and she can sense it just through thin air, and that sort of intuition is almost really, it's like a telepathy thing, and
I think that is Lou Elizondo talked about that a lot in his book Imminent, and in subsequent interviews he discussed that, and he said that it's probably, when we finally do understand it, he said it'll probably not be as strange as we think it is now. It'll probably be a lot more like basic, almost like this vestigial capability that we had from previous eras, and maybe like I know exactly what you're talking about. Like my wife and I sometimes will the other day I was at the store, I'm getting groceries, and I'm like walking down the aisle, and I stop and I go, I should get a candle. need to get a candle. And there were 2 different types of candles. I picked up both of them. I smelled them. I go, oh, it's this one. And I came home and my wife was like, I was thinking you should get that scented candle. I wanted you to pick one up. I'm so glad you got it. And I was like, this is the dumbest psychic exchange ever, but it's so true. Like, it happens all the time. You know, family members, close friends, anybody that you have this closeness with seems to be almost entrained with you. And I think we all do it from time to time. And I feel like you're right. Psychoactivo, Pavel's podcast, Psychoactivo, Pavel is very big on this whole concept. And I think he's onto something that at the end of the day, there almost needs to be a school that teaches people how to access those talents and abilities and puts it into a language that's more like accessible to the modern person. I think the closest thing is probably Robert Monroe's Hemisync program, the Gateway tapes.
Yes, you can actually hear it via YouTube, and you can
Have you
listen
done
to
it?
it. You can channel yourself.
Did you
Do
ever have you
meditation.
done the Gateway tapes at all?
I'm just listening for just a few of it. So I'm listening. I'm trying to catch up with this whole story, the remote viewing, ESP and stuff. I had out of body experience, for example, when I was in surgery, and it was not fun. It was so
What was not
ominous.
fun? What was ominous?
Out of body experience.
Oh, what was
When
ominous
you
about it?
drop out of your body. I have it through a surgery, and after the surgery, the doctors came to my parents and told me there was complications, and it doesn't make a sense to me. And after it, I put the picture together. So I was in top of the room. I see a person that was operated by, and that was me. And it was so funny and weird, and I don't know what happened, but it gave me a sense, an ominous feeling, and I know I was dead in a few seconds. So it was not fun. But
I think
it was actually. Sorry.
Go right ahead. How did it change your view of reality? What did it change the way you think about life and death and how you face your day-to-day existence?
Yes, absolutely. So not just this. I usually believe in spiritual things, that we are spiritual creatures. In our folklore in Hungary, we teach our kids that everybody and everything has a soul, and everything is communicating to another. For example, the trees have life in it. We know that the elements, even the particles, resonate with each other. We resonate through a sense that we can, and this channels back to the quantum communications thing, that we all things are communicating with each other, and we can download information, for example, through thin air, and not just thin air. So back to the original story, the out of body experience. It changed me in a way that I perceive information, and I don't know how to put it. Sorry for my English. I'm a bit shy at the moment. This is my first live call.
It's okay. I think you're doing great. Just keep going, and don't worry about getting it exactly right. Just say, just take your time.
I try to describe it. So, out of body experience. So, we people doesn't appreciate our lives, ourselves, just when things hit the fan. For example, I don't want to swear, sorry, but when it gets really bad, you will actually appreciate what's given to you, and time and all these things that are surrounding us, the teachings that are, for example, our parents give us, our ancestors, and so on, our culture. And I'm not speaking as a Hungarian, I'm speaking as an earthling. I live in planet Earth. And, this whole experience teach me that you have to view everything from a different perspective, from another angle. You have to just lean back and see the whole picture. For example, we have doctors that are separated for just like, this is a proctologist, this is a cardiologist, and nobody is the whole doctor. When a person that knows the people, what is good for the people, and knows the people in complexity,
Like a
I don't know if you
holistic,
get it.
yeah, a holistic view, someone who takes the full picture and can make sense of the fuller picture. I think that it sounds like what you're talking about. It reminds me, and maybe I'm getting this, I don't know, correct me if I get it wrong. I think in Western culture, the idea is to break things down into their smallest, most smallest units and specialized units. And the more you want to understand something, the more you have to specialize. And eventually, like, you have all these different specialists that are experts in one particular area, but without a generalist to sort of bring all of it together and create something useful out of it. We get mired in the details, and you can't see the forest for the trees. There was a guy by the name of Jacques Fresco, who many in our audience may recognize that name. He is he's dead now. He's a futurist and a designer, and he gave this great interview on Larry King back in the 70s. And he said, like, basically what you said. He's like, you have to have this generalist, holistic mindset about what a civilization should be and how it should all, work to feed back on itself and make it and improve itself and take care of the full system. And it was just really a new idea for me at the time. And anyway, you reminded me of that line of thinking, and I feel like indigenous cultures seem to appreciate that more. They have a more holistic perspective about life and the world and spirituality and our role in the universe. And we've been so busy trying to, like, solve everything by breaking it down into smaller and smaller pieces. And all that we find as we go deeper and deeper is that there's just more stuff. There's a great, I wish I could find it. David Lynch actually does, of the Lynch Foundation, the director, Twin Peaks guy, David Lynch, does a great explanation of meditation, of transcendental meditation and consciousness. And it's in black and white. It's on YouTube. You can find it. And he talks about this, and he does it so elegantly. I'll see if I can find it. It ties directly into what you're saying.
Sorry, you mean in a digestible way?
Yes.
Like people can catch up with it. Sorry for the interruption, but I want to pinpoint a thing. This is compartmentalization, what we are talking about. Everything is getting compartmentalized, not just in the UFO field, but in every spectrum, every profession, every occupation, name it. You see compartmentalization, and people are getting further away from each other, even in study, even in scientific, even in academia. It's getting away. So we have to go back to our original thinking of everything, theory of everything. Maybe this is the right
I feel like I think, thank you for the call, and I think you make a great point. I feel like we're inevitably going to wind up there. It seems like all roads through ufology wind up leading to consciousness in one way or another. I don't know why it is that way. It just seems to be that way. And maybe there's some fundamental truth at the bottom of this thing that at the end of the day changes our whole view of how it all works. Certainly, Ingo Swann talks about this in his presentations and in his interviews and in his books. He said that this is not remote viewing, and Bob Monroe talked about astral projection in the same terms. They're not extraordinary skills. Everybody can do it. It's as natural as learning how to swim. If you can learn how to swim, you can learn how to do this stuff. But the problem is we don't have that knowledge isn't a part of our society. It's not part of our culture. So we don't know how to incorporate that. And I dipped my toe into the gateway tapes, and I just found like the first few sessions were so good that if you just apply yourself and do it a little bit, you start to realize the power of that whole process, and it just seems to be the next step.
Yes, yes. I have just a final sentence, if you allow me. Our culture and our ancestors are and our folklore are relating to ancient Sumerology. So we have different cultures, but we are all the same. It doesn't depend on other countries and nations. We are all the same, and I think if we get to the ancient teachings, get back to the ancient teachings, for example, read, educate ourselves, like in Egyptology, and like Graham Hancock said in Ancient Apocalypse. If you go back and for just to seek out information from the ancient people, you will have much more knowledge of this present time than and technology even. For example, Randall Carlson had a thunderstorm generator. I don't know. Check it out. It's on YouTube. It's mind-bending, actually. And this is it came from an ancient technology that was forbidden, and it works. And it generates oxygen out of a diesel engine, pure oxygen.
Wow.
So it is mind-bending.
You have to link to that in the chat. Please put that link in the chat so people can check that out.
Yeah, sure.
We've got to wrap up because we're running out of time, but thank you so much for the call.
Okay, guys, I appreciate it. I'm thankful. Have a nice day.
All right, you too. Thank you for the call. Or night, or
Bye.
wherever you may be. We've got people all over the world listening tonight. My afternoon, your evening. So much to cover, so much to talk about this week, and we barely scratched the surface. We've got to start to wrap it up there, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for participating in the chat. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. Please, if you joined us later in the show, go back and watch the beginning and check out Matt Ford's direct statement to Nancy Mace and the House subcommittee. I think you'll find it pretty powerful. The names that he drops are real people, and they're out there. They've got LinkedIn profiles and YouTube interviews. It complicates the whole thing, I think, and certainly raises a whole nother series of questions.
If you don't mind me,
go ahead.
Just giving a quick last word. Just on the calls alone, it wasn't just Zoltan, but particularly Zoltan. It shows there's a huge appetite for not just the conversation about the nuts and bolts of everything. We want the appetite about the meaning of life at the end of the day and the truth about reality. So, gatekeep the technology, absolutely, but give us something to work with. And, I get the sense that we're going to talk for a decade. If we learn that consciousness is more to it than we previously thought, that will keep us busy. You can just take another 20 years to figure stuff out,
You're so right. It's at the end of the day, I think it's about just finding ways to come together and hope for a better world. That's what this audience is about. That's what this show is about. And if we can make that happen, then we're doing the right thing. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to like and share this video, and participate in the chat. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, keep looking up.